Huh? Because they don't have Vice. I can't look at the reports. Well, that sucks. Oh well, here we go.
Is Fiona all right?
Is she? No. What do you mean, no?
Oh God, no.
Oh, please, the girl is fine.
Vice? Where are you, boy?
Vice? Where are you? Are you okay?
I am as well as can be, considering I have lost my physical form.
Oh.
Doubtless my voice will be the next to go, so listen closely. Your sister is safe. Do not mourn her, and do not give up hope. Instead, you must call her back to you.
How?
Use your memories. Recall the times you spent with her. Present her with proof that the two of you live still, and that your lives have meaning.
I don't know.
Typical. But take heart. I know you can do it.
Aw. Thanks, Vicey.
What's my favorite food?
Oh, man.
Cookies. What's my favorite book? That's my magic storybook.
Okay.
What's my favorite place? Home with you. What's my favorite flower? The lunar tear, of course. Okay, one more question. Who do I love more than anyone?
Is it me? Do I write my name? I hope. Yeah. Just have to enter your own name. Yona, you're awake.
Is that you?
Yeah, girl. I'm here to save the day.
Is this my body?
Yes,
You've been asleep for a while.
it's yours and yours alone.
You look bigger than before. Like you've grown up.
Oh, yeah. Guess you haven't seen me for a while.
Have I been asleep this whole time?
Kinda.
Something like that.
It's almost like I'm a princess from some fairy tale.
Oh.
I'm so happy to have you back.
Me too.
Kaine.
You and your sister. You have a good life, okay?
Oh.
Where are you gonna go?
Guess I'll...
You could stay with us, you know.
Thanks, but I'll pass.
Oh.
You know how it is. I got my own shit to take care of.
What do you mean?
Personal shit, alright? Anyway, take it easy, yeah?
Okay.
Kaine.
Hey, look. It's beautiful. For the longest time, I heard someone telling me how they wanted to see the light.
Aw.
And now, they can finally see it.
The Yona Gestalt. Here we go. What? How did we go back?
Thank you. I love it.
traps.
It's so sunny today.
Yeah, it sure is.
Oh. Wow. No skipping available. Wow, what an amazing game. Thank you to everyone, all these talented people here that made such a masterpiece. I hope that they remake either Drakengard 1 or 3 next. I hope that's a thing that's going to be in the making, or at least the next title in the NieR series. I don't know, like somewhere in between here and Automata, like 5,000, 6,000. That would be super cool. Kochihama, facial animator. Ooh. It's not a Kochi's. Such a long credit sequence. A lot of people worked on this, so I suppose it makes sense. I want to know more about Accord. She's in Drakengard 3, which is supposedly the prequel to the first one, which means that she would still be in that universe. And apparently she goes to and fro. She's an android. That could very well tie into Automata. So could it be after? Maybe it's just a big loop. I don't know. But I do remember it being mentioned because Yona, in one of her diary entries, says that somebody named Accord came to the village with a briefcase of wonderful things, and that's kind of her thing. So I'm wondering how exactly she got into this universe. If it wasn't canon before and she was just in Drakengard 3, but she's mentioned in Automata. She has been coming and going, man. For thousands of years in this series, apparently. It's kind of the whole reason I wanted to play one of the Drakengard games, is just to try to figure out more on her backstory. They're going to have their own game. She seemed to be a little bit more, even if she wasn't in this game, she was mentioned in Automata and then mentioned again in this. I don't know if she was mentioned in the original, but she was most definitely mentioned in this one by Yona's diary entry in the loading screens. Tara Sand was the red bag woman. Fantastic. I just realized the credits were alphabetized. That was intense. Tokotaro! And such great work. Kichibi Okabe. Amazing stuff. A lot of Yukis on this project. Wow. Take a bow. Amazing. Oof. Oof. The library. Yeah. First ending in Lightspeed Fighter. Tiny story. Departed Mother Diary. My wardrobe. Wow. Whoa. Okay. Let's see how that goes.
Whenever I interacted with Kaine, I was reminded about something from my past. Maybe my mind has been confusing her with my sister this whole time. Anyway.
So now that we're playing Kaine's story, we're going to get a whole different outlook on this game. Kaine's dreams, discrimination. The sound of rain filled the village. The steep cliffs that surrounded the area magnified sound, causing even the slightest drizzle to rattle like a thunderstorm. Thin wisps of smoke streamed from huts as the villagers huddled in their homes and waited out the rain. A single child, however, had braved the downpour, and was now wandering slowly towards the wooden hawk-shaped weather vane in the center of town. The wanderer reached the vein, which had existed for as long as any could remember, and stared. The child's face was simultaneously delicate and fierce, like a teacup that had survived a shipwreck. Those traits combined with the pale white skin to give the face an almost sexless quality. If the beak turns east, I go home. If it stays west, then I... The child blinked. Rain slowly dripped down the young one's short hair and began its long descent to the ground. Come on! Come on! The child felt a slight breeze and watched as the vein slowly creaked to life, spinning this way and that for a moment, and it finally settled with the beak pointing firmly toward the east. East? Really? Before the vein could move again, a jagged rock came spinning and tumbling through the air, striking home against the child's head. The force of the blow dropped the child to the ground as the hail of stones began to fall all around. Oh no, they found me! A heartbreaking smile crept across the child's face as the stones continued their assault. Through the rain, and the sound of multiple footsteps grew louder before the voice rang out. Yoo-hoo, Kaine! The voice belonged to Demo, worst of the bullies in the area. As Kaine struggled to stand, a final stone came skittering through the mud and bounced against her foot. These little bastards. Blood oozed from the cut above her eye and blurred her vision, and she couldn't make out the shapes of Demo and his usual gang of idiots. The boy seemed taken aback for a moment by Kaine's seemingly indifference to the blood dripping from her face and quickly regained his bravado. What's up, freak? You like the rain? You like getting all wet? Or did you finally decide to run away from home? Though she knew it was futile, Kaine returned to leave. Before she could get more than a few steps, the other children scrambled to surround her, cruelty burning in their eyes. Kaine knew those were not the eyes on her. The tormentor's parents watched from the safety of their homes. She was attuned to the sensation. It was one she had experienced many times before. While some villagers simply turned a blind eye to the actions of the children, many encouraged it openly. In a society ruled by superstition and fear, Kaine was something to be hated, and if possible, destroyed. I didn't say you could leave, freak. Demo's words chewed at her like a worm through an apple. He can't hurt me, she lied to herself. Be strong, be brave. He can't hurt me, he can't hurt me, he can't hurt. Oh look, the little freak's gonna cry. What's wrong? Are you sad that everyone hates you and wants you dead? Kaine prayed for the rain to flood down and carry her away from the world that seemed to have no place for her. But if there were gods, they chose to ignore her. As Demo crept even closer, the clouds began to thin and the rain slowed. Even the weather hates me. I'm useless. A failure. I wish Demo's rock had taken my head off. Kaine couldn't meet Demo's leering gaze as she lowered her eyes and stared at the muddy ground below. The bully moved forward until he was inches away. She could smell the scent of old meat on his breath. Ugh. Gross. The boy grabbed Kaine's face with thick fingers and yanked it upward. She tried to turn away, but he forced her gaze back and jammed his thumb against her eyelid to pry it open. Show me. No. Did you just say no? Demo grinned evilly. You don't say no to me. No one says no to me. Even taking his attention from Kaine, he called his cohorts. Come on, guys, let's give the freak what she deserves. As soon as Demo finished, kicks and blows began to rain down upon Kaine. Demo paused, still grinning, as Kaine curled into a ball and tried to make the pain stop. I don't get you, freak. What you acting like a girl for, huh? Everybody knows what you really are. Excuse you? Rude. Kaine ignored the question, choosing to stare at the weather vane and continued to point east, as if supremely confident about the future it had chosen for her. Go home? Yeah, that's a funny joke for someone with dead parents and no home to go to. Freak, chanted the children. Freak, freak, freak. So rude. Kaine closed her eyes and listened to the rain, waiting for the pain to start again. As the clutching hands of the children closed around her, she bent her mind to the sound of the rain, letting it become the world entire. The rain fell, but the pain never came. Only when the laughter of her tormentors turned to terrified cries did she dare open a single blood-caked eye. Kaine was shocked to see Demo sprawled on the ground, holding his head and screaming in pain. She could see the blood welling up from spaces between his fat, twisted fingers. Oh my god, he's crying. He's actually crying. Deprived of their leader, the other children glanced back and forth between themselves as if waiting for someone to step up and take charge. When no savior emerged, they began to uneasily shuffle away from Kaine. But the young girl was the least of their concerns. Instead, their attention was wrapped to the ancient woman standing a few feet away. Grandma! After struggling for breath for a moment, she finally spoke in a voice thick with rage. Hurts like a little bitch, don't it? Now I suggest you scatter before I throw another one. I gotta do a better old lady voice. Hurts like a bitch, don't it? Now I suggest you scatter before I throw another one. And if any of you little bastards ever touch my Kaine again, I'll do far worse than throw a rock. You can count on it. Damn right. The old woman crouched down and gently touched the hand Demo was using to cover the wound. Before he could think to protest, she ground her palm into the wound and twisted back and forth. Hardcore granny. Ow, he screamed, leaping to his feet. Stop it, what are you doing? Quit whining. Ain't no one ever died from a scratch. You hit me with a rock, you stupid bitch. The big one. The thing could have killed me. The old woman shrugged. Death is the best cure for us, the stupid. Demo's face twisted with rage at her words. Locking his eyes on Kaine, he took a step backward and spat on the ground. Get out. Leave this village. No one wants you here, either of you. Seeing the old woman grab another stone, Demo and his companions turned tail and ran. As they fled, the old woman grabbed her side and barked out a single laugh. Ho, ho, ho. Ha! Look at the fat boy go. Guess he's healthy enough to run from a fight. The old woman's smile faded as she turned her attention to Kaine. Kneeling down, she removed her shawl and placed it around the young girl's shoulders and produced a cloth from the folds of her dress and began blotting out the blood on her forehead. Oh, Kaine, she said, why didn't you fight back? You're stronger than that lot. The words of her grandmother stung Kaine. She turned away. Don't be nice to me, she said. I don't deserve it. Nothing matters anymore. Her tears, held in check for so long, finally began to fall into the muddy ground below. Everyone hates me. They think I cause bad things to happen. They think I'm a freak. I wish I was dead. As Kaine's tears turned to sobs, she felt her grandmother's hands on her shoulders. Despite her advanced age and diminutive size, she was a woman of surprising strength, and Kaine found herself unable to turn away. Don't talk like that, girl. It's a river wide and deep that flows between the realms of this world and the next, and it grants no mercy to any to attempt that crossing. You got a duty to fight until your last breath. Understand? The old woman tightened her grip and tried to still a tremor in her voice. You know the pain of losing someone close to you, Kaine. You know because you survived it. As the words hit home, Kaine was struck by the force of her love for the old woman. As a young child, she didn't even know of her grandmother, but when her parents died, the woman quickly accepted her as her own. Grandma, as Kaine called her, was cunning, vulgar, and quick to violence, and their first few years together had not been easy. But with each year that passed, Kaine and her grandmother grew closer. However, it was only now that sitting in the mud with tears and blood caked on her face that Kaine truly understood the depths of her affection. Here was a woman who had seen hard times, who had seen death, who had fought through all of these things and somehow emerged on the other side. If anyone could understand Kaine's pain and loneliness, it was her. Do I make you sick, Grandma? Of course not. Don't be an ass. Kaine drew her grandmother's moth-eaten shawl around her body and shuddered. But my body, it's not normal. Who cares? If I was normal, then Mom and Dad wouldn't... Hush, interrupted Grandma. I'll not hear another word of this nonsense. You're my granddaughter, and I love you. And if folks have a problem with that, then they could just go to hell. With that, the old woman reached out and placed a wreath of dried flowers in Kaine's hair. The skill it took to bend the flowers without breaking the stems or losing a single petal was remarkable, and the beauty of it made Kaine want to cry all over again. Oh my gosh, these are lunar tears. Grandma, you made this for me? Lunar tears were legendary flowers. Most people could live their entire lives without ever seeing one, and yet her grandmother had somehow collected a dozen or more. Kaine reached up and touched the wreath as if she couldn't believe that it was real. Where did you find these? Just stumbled on them while I was out doing some shopping. The old woman turned away as she spoke, leading Kaine to suspect that the search had been more difficult than she was leading on. The pains she took to construct the ornament, let alone track down the flowers used in its construction, made Kaine's heart hurt. She reached up and gently adjusted the wreath, admiring how it felt between her fingers. Didn't quite turn out right, said the grandmother as she squinted at it. These old hands have troubles with delicate work, but it sure looks good on a pretty girl like you. Kaine blushed and turned away. You think I'm pretty? Of course you are. What a fool thing to say. Thank you, Grandma. His grandmother smiled. We're going to be fine, you and me. As long as we got each other, we'll be just fine. Kaine took her grandmother's hand in hers, and the two of them struggled to their feet. As they began the long walk home, Kaine gripped the hand with all of her might as if trying to stop smoke from drifting away on the wind. The rain had stopped. Kaine stood beneath the weather vane, watching it spin in lazy circles, no longer caring about the direction it faced when it stopped. I don't need to escape. I have a home now. Grandma loves me, and that's enough. Even if it's us against the world. Kaine let her gaze drift up past the vane and into the cloudy sky. The last faint hints of a rainbow were slowly fading. As she turned and headed home, the light scattered into a million particles and vanished, seemingly taken away on the breeze. Kaine's dreams, daily life. In the distance, Kaine heard the steady sounds of an axe striking wood. The noise had a purposeful quality to it, as if she was hearing a master woodsman go about his work. I need some water. This is a lot of reading. The firewood being produced, however, was far from the work of art as it could be. Pieces of every shape and size were being flung out of the barren yard with wild abandon. Abandon? Anyone trying to stack such wood would probably die of frustration before the job was through. Stupid piece of shit axe! Kaine's grandmother flailed away with the axe. Oh, it was her grandma. Flailing the air with both splinters of wood and words that would make most the hardened sailor blush. Stupid piece of shit axe! Grandma, called Kaine. That you, Kaine? Yelled the old woman, taking her eyes off the wood for a moment. Don't get too close, or I might take your goddamn foot off it by mistake. She brought the axe down to the piece of wood, sending chips flying in every direction. One spun past Kaine close enough for her to hear a whistle, at which point she decided to step back. Once she'd scuttled to a safe distance, she cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, Grandma! Do you need help? I can get you water or lunch or a new axe or something. The axe poised to strike another wobbly blow. Paused in midair, the old woman considered her granddaughter's offer for a moment, and then she smiled. Tell you what, since I'm doing such a piss-poor job at chopping, why don't you come here and take over and I can go get the water? Shades have been restless lately, and I don't want you running into one of those bastards. Relinquishing the axe, her grandmother picked up a long pole with wooden buckets on either end. Gathering water was a far more difficult job of the two jobs, but Kaine knew better than to complain. Once Grandma's mind was set, there was no changing it. Kaine did her best to help with the chores, but Grandma took every task that required travel to the village. Though she had a long list of plausible excuses, Kaine knew the real reason. She didn't want her granddaughter to be taunted and harassed by the villagers. Once Kaine moved in, Grandma decided to take up residence a good distance from the area. Out of sight, out of mind seemed to be the best policy when it came to the villagers and her granddaughter. And rare were the days when but the two of them could be found on the rocky acre of land they called home, right outside the area. Kaine enjoyed the solitude, but harbored a secret resentment that her grandmother was forced to spend her golden years in such a place. After watching her grandmother leave, Kaine turned her attention to the task at hand. She had never chopped wood before in her life, and soon discovered why the old woman hated the chore. Swing after swing, the axe produced only a tiny crack in the wood. When she finally managed to connect with a solid stroke, the tool embedded itself in the log and refused to budge. Frustrated, Kaine swung the axe around her head and threw it, log and all, across the yard. Damn it, ah, crap. She suddenly understood the joy that her grandmother felt in a good curse. Happier now, she picked up the axe, forced it from the wood, and resumed chopping. She had a natural skill with a blade, but the task was challenging, and blisters soon began to form on her small pink hands. This is tough. My logs are all weird sizes. Gross. Spitting on her palms and ignoring the pain, Kaine redoubled her efforts. Just as she was developing a rhythm, Grandma returned from the village. Setting down her buckets with a small sigh, she took one look at the logs and coughed out a wheezy laugh. Pretty clumsy girl, you better practice if you... Grandmother slowly collapsed to her knees, causing one of the buckets to wobble precariously. Eyes wide, Kaine dropped the axe and ran to her grandmother's side. Grandma! The old woman shook her head and pointed her trembling finger at the bucket. Get the bucket. Can't let it spill. Kaine steadied the bucket with her foot as she knelt by her grandmother. A small bit of water sloshed over the side and made a new home in the hem of her dress, but Kaine didn't notice. Grandma, what's happening? Crazed with panic, she grabbed her mother by the shoulders and shook. After a moment, the woman lifted her arms and batted Kaine away. Stop that! Just stop! She cried, breathing heavily. It ain't like I'm dying. Just tired from the trip is all. Kaine desperately wanted to believe her, but one look at the old woman's shaking hands and worked face told her more than words ever could. Her grandmother had lived a long, hard life, and it seemed the bill was finally coming due. The time when her grandmother watched over Kaine was ending. Sooner than either of them had feared, the positions would be reversed. The next morning, Kaine came to the side of her grandmother's bed and took her wrinkled hand. Grandma, you're sick. You need medicine. I'm going to the village. The old woman shook her head and tried to rise, but Kaine gently pushed her down. It's all right, she said. I'll be fine. Her grandmother fixed her with a gaze that could melt steel. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally lowered her eyes and sighed. Well, I don't like it, goddammit. But I guess I should quit being so stubborn and let you grow up. The old woman watched as Kaine strapped on her boots and made her way down to the road to the village. Hours later, as the unseen sun made its way across the dark and rainy sky, she was still watching. Kaine moved at a brisk pace, checking her pockets every few minutes to make sure the money her grandmother gave her was still there. Yeah. Every noise caused her to spin on her heels, making sure that she wasn't being stalked by a shade, or worse, Demo and his gang. But she encountered neither tormentors nor shades, and Kaine finally found herself at the entrance to the village. A few adults she could see glanced sideways at her, then muttered to each other behind raised hands before slinking away into the shadows. Her heart racing, Kaine took a series of rapid, shallow breaths and tried to calm herself. I have to prove myself. I have to help Grandma. I have to be strong. She chanted these words to herself over and over as she slowly made her way. Finally, her eyes settled on a rotund older woman who was angrily waving her arms in the air and telling anyone who would listen exactly what she thought of Kaine's presence. "Hey lady," Kaine said with a bravado she did not feel. "Where's the apothecary?" The woman's flabby cheeks shook in bewildered anger. "How dare this thing speak to me?" they seemed to say, but Kaine saw that her eyes held different emotions. Fear. "Yeah, we're both scared, lady. Trust me on this one." "Which way?" Kaine repeated. The old woman pointed to a small building to her right, before hitching up her dress and stumbling off in the other direction. Kaine cringed, expecting a stone to come flying from an assembled crowd, but none came. Her mind was filled with a strange sense of pride as she made her way to the apothecary. But the new emotion had little time to take root. As soon as she opened the door, she noticed a familiar customer at the counter. It was Demo. He'd clearly been sent here on some kind of family errand because his gang of followers was nowhere to be found. "Oh my god," he sputtered. "I mean, what are you doing here, freak?" The insult was delivered without force, and Kaine happily ignored it. Stretching on tiptoes to see over the counter, she asked the shopkeeper for the medication. "Ha!" barked Demo. "That old bitch finally keel over? Go to hell, Demo." The boy's eyes grew so wide that they seemed ready to fall out of his head, but before he could let fly a comeback or worse, a punch, the apothecary told them to knock it off before he kicked them out of the store. Demo slunk out of the shop, cursing Kaine under his breath. Once he was gone, she allowed herself to breathe once more, taking a brief tour of the shop while the owner prepared her medication. Countless tiny bottles filled the cramped store, each with a label written in some indecipherable language. An ocean of aromas assaulted her nose, creating a scent that was exotic, but not altogether unpleasant. Seeing such a variety of supplies gave Kaine a sense of peace. Surely in a world so vast, there would be a place that she could call home. On the far wall, behind the counter, rested a portrait of a stunning young girl. The picture had once contained bright, vibrant colors, but time had worked its cruel magic, and they were beginning to fade. The beauty of the work, however, remained undiminished. "You like that picture?" Kaine turned to find the apothecary with a small vial of medicine in his hand. His eyes were gentle, but sad, and they seemed to stare through her and into nothing as she spoke. "That's my daughter. I sketched it when she was just a little girl. She's been dead for a long time now." Kaine did not know how to respond, and she just stared up at the portrait and tried to come up with the right words. "Pictures are wonderful things," continued the shopkeeper. "They let the ones closest to you live on forever." He shook his head slightly, and then looked down at Kaine and smiled, handing her the medicine. He reached the sizable green apron and produced a handful of old wax crayons. "You should have these. There's no one left that I wish to draw." Kaine took an instinctive step back, causing the shopkeeper's face to darken. "Yes, I've heard rumors about you," he said. "It's a small village, and word travels quickly. Between you and me, I'm not sure which of them to believe, but I don't think they matter much. I know your grandmother, Callie. And I think the way that she was driven out of this town is just deplorable." "Grandmother's name is Callie?" thought Kaine suddenly. She was still mulling over the new fact over in her mind as she reached out and gently took the crayons from the apothecary's hands. "Your grandmother's an old friend of mine," he said, as Kaine scooted away yet again, "and I owe her much. I wager she would like it if you drew a picture of her." "Yes, I think she would like that very much." Kaine murmured a quiet agreement, and then inside her heart was bursting. Never before had a villager treated her with anything but complete contempt. It was tiny, almost inseparable step, but it was a step nonetheless, and with enough tiny steps, there might one day discover the rest of the world. She might one day. When Kaine returned home, she found her grandmother asleep in her bed. Her feet were blackened and raw, even bleeding in a bit of places, leading Kaine to think that she had been pacing around the room until exhaustion finally caught up with her. She placed the medicine by her grandmother's pillow and turned to leave, but found an old woman's hand collapsed around her arm, clasped. Back already, are you? Asked her grandmother with a yawn. Come here and let me have a look at you. Grandma sat up and examined Kaine from head to toe, and finally satisfied that nothing terrible had befallen her grandchild, she leaned back and allowed herself to relax. Well, how was it? Those bastards give you any trouble? It was kind of fun, said Kaine with a small smile. No, seriously, it was. Fun, eh? Asked her grandmother in a voice which implied she believed anything but. Uh-huh. So anytime you need me to run an errand, just let me know. As she spoke, Kaine removed the crayons from her pocket. After a brief explanation of their source, she informed her grandmother that she was going to sketch her portrait. A portrait of me? Ridiculous. No one wants to stare at a wrinkled old crone. Grandma, it'll make you live forever. Oh shit, said her grandmother, throwing back her sheets from her bed. Living forever would just piss me off. Now put those crayons away and help me with dinner. But Kaine would not relent, and in the end, Grandma found herself leaning against the wall of their house as if posing for a master artist. Kaine took up the crayons, eyed her subject carefully, and set to work. Just as her grandmother was about to nod off, Kaine finished the piece. And staring at it for a bit, she released it from her grip and let it slowly drift to the floor. It's terrible. It doesn't look like you at all. I'm sorry, Grandma. I thought these crayons would, make drawing easy or something. The old woman's eyes narrowed at her granddaughter's disappointment. Let me be the judge of that, she said, ignoring the pain in her back and reaching for the paper. The sketch could have been a person's face. It also could have been a boulder, a lump of clay, or an incredibly misshapen loaf of bread, all rendered in a chaotic array of colors. The old woman stared at the picture for a long time and slowly wheezed out a laugh. Oh, Kaine, she said with laughter, you truly are my blood. You're as clumsy as me, and I love it. But hush, I won't hear any more bull about how ugly you think it is. It came from the heart, and I'll treasure it always. Aw, Grandma. True to her word, the old woman gave the picture a place of honor above the kitchen table. In the days that followed, Kaine would often catch her staring at the portrait with a strange smile on her face, an action she interpreted as silent, mocking laughter. A week later, Kaine could stand it no more and asked her grandmother to take the artwork down. Posh, said the old woman. I'll take this down when they roll me in my shroud. She pondered this for a bit, then she turned to Kaine and dropped to one knee. Listen to me, girl. Seeing this picture makes me happy in a way I've never felt before, and it makes me want to go on so that someday you can feel that same happiness. It's the moment that burned itself into Kaine's memory, a perfect blend of pride and love and joy that came together to form a lifelong remembrance. She swore to never forget that moment, to never forget the old woman who had made her place in the world possible. Time moves on. People and memories move in and out of life like ghosts passing through a hall. But this moment will be different, Kaine swore, because I will remember it forever. Forever. Well, I think that's all the time I'm going to have for this video. I don't know if I have enough for another one. I'll read one more. Kaine listened to the sound of the crackling firewood and stared at the black object on her plate. She had been pushing it around the wooden disc for a good 10 minutes, ignoring the bemused stare of her grandmother. Finally, she summoned her courage and gave the object a small sniff. A sharp, bitter scent flew up her nostrils and made its home there, causing her face to twist with disgust. Grandma, I can't believe you want me to eat a bug. The old woman threw some more wood under the cooking pot and snorted. It's no bug, you fool girl, it's a berry. Why the hell would I be feeding you bugs? Yeah, well, it looks like a bug, said Kaine. I think it's burnt or something, because it smells terrible. With that, Kaine held her nose and threw the berry in her mouth, chewing as little as possible. Oh yeah, that's terrible, all right. Oh yeah, that's terrible, all right. Why, you little brat, laughed the old woman. Look at the sass on you. You've been spending too much time with me, and that's a fact. 5 years had passed since the moment when Kaine's grandmother saved her from the bullies. It's often the way that two stubborn people, the relationship had grown in fits and starts, but moved forward all the same. Meals that had used to be somber affairs were now filled with laughter and hurled abuse in equal measure. Kaine could not remember a time when she had not been happier. As the years went by, Kaine started to shoulder more and more of the daily responsibilities. Her grandmother's legs grew weaker by the day. She could no longer do so many of the chores that she used to take for granted. And so this morning found Kaine lacing up her boots, up her work boots, with a breakfast of burned berry rolling through her belly. Where are you going today? Grandma asked suddenly. Kaine looked up surprised. The old woman rarely asked for specifics anymore. Well, I was going to check out the kelma trees and see if they were ripe. I thought we could make some jam or something. Oh, and I'm going to pick up some flagstones, so I need the wheelbarrow. Flagstones? What the hell for? Kaine stared at her grandmother, then held out an arm and swiped it around their home. Constructed mostly out of cloth, rope, and rubble, the old place sagged like a boxer in a final round. Grandma, a dying cat could chew through this house. I'm going to build a stone wall so we have some protection. The old woman laughed, exposing her toothless grin to the world. God damn, girl, if a bunch of thieves want to ransack this old place, let them come. We got nothing worth stealing anyways. I'm not worried about thieves, I'm worried about shades. People saw one west of the village yesterday. The old woman tilted her head and stared at her granddaughter. Well, shoot, I don't know why you have to do it today. We can't worry about it some other... Grandma, no. If I don't go to the kelma trees, we won't eat tonight, you know that. A confused expression passed the old woman's face for a moment. She was a small child lost at a carnival. Yes, she said after a bit. Yes, of course, you're right. I'm sorry, Kaine. Lately, it seems my mind is... She didn't finish the thought. Instead of walking to her nightstand and gently taking the wreath of lunar tears from the drawer, the flower petals had aged to a brilliant whiteness. Kaine thought that it was more beautiful now than the day she first received it. You're gonna be a true woman soon, Grandma said as she placed the flower in the girl's hair. So that means less chatter about shades and building defensive walls, and more talk about how beautiful you've become. Annoyed, Kaine reached up and removed the garland, but the look on her grandmother's face stopped her hand. You're a beautiful thing, said the old woman. There ain't any other like you in the world. I'm very proud of you. Okay, Grandma, that's enough goddamn compliments for one day. Such a mouth on you. Where'd that come from? Gee, I wonder. I'll teach you to sass me, girl, yelled Grandma. Suddenly, she lurched forward and grabbed Kaine by the ears, pulling her around the room with a crazed grin on her face. Grandma! Yelled Kaine in a quaky voice. Grandma, stop it! What the hell? The old one stared at her, blinked, and then slowly held her wrinkled hand out as if it was the first time she had ever seen them. I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry, my girl. Sometimes my mind just... Kaine thought the look on her grandmother's face was the most heartbreaking thing she'd ever seen. Listen, she began, maybe I should stay home after all. No, I won't have you stay here and keep an eye on an old codger like me. You go get your fruit and wall and whatnot, I'll be fine. And when you come back, I'll have a nice grasshopper dinner waiting for you. Kaine rolled her eyes, then kissed her grandmother on the forehead and made ready to depart, trying desperately to ignore the worry that was gnawing at the walls of her heart. Kaine could feel the old woman's eyes watching her as she moved down the path. Don't turn around, she told herself, but in the end, temptation was too great. She spun on her heel and took one final look at the small, bent woman standing in the front of the ramshackle hut with a sad expression on her face. God, she looks so old now. It's like the wind could just reach down and carry her away. Kaine worried about her grandmother all day, causing her work to suffer. What little fruit she could collect was tossed carelessly to the wheelbarrow, and she could only find a couple stones before losing interest in the project. Finally, as dusk approached, she decided to call it a day. Cursing herself with a lack of focus, Kaine pushed a nearly empty wheelbarrow back down the path. As she crested the final hill, she suddenly froze in place. The wheelbarrow fell from her fingers and collapsed to the side, sending a few pieces of wrinkled brown fruit rolling down the hill. Her gaze was transfixed by a thick black cloud that had just hovered ahead, tracing its path with its fingers. Kaine suddenly felt her stomach knot in on itself. Oh no, oh gods, no. Her grandmother's house was ablaze, flames licking it up as if trying to touch the sky itself. Grandma? Grandma! Kaine ran then, faster than she had ever moved in her life. Once she tripped on the stone and went sprawling to the rocky ground, but then she had leapt to her feet and continued running, unmindful of the blood that spilled from her wounded hands and knees. As she got closer and closer, Kaine's man began to race in time with her footfalls. It's too dark, not just fire, it can't just be fire, there's too much smoke, gotta save her. She burst in the front yard and came down to a sudden halt. Her worst suspicion was confirmed. The smoke from the fire was mingling with the thick, inky blackness of an enormous shade. The massive creature supported itself on 3 twisted feet and achieved balance through a means of long armored tail. Scales and horns and claws sprouted from its body in random chaotic pattern, giving it the appearance of a lizard designed by some insane god. Seeing Kaine, it let out a roar and flicked its tail, sending a small whirlwind spinning around the yard. For a moment, the creature retreated into a shimmering inky blackness, as if her mind was unable to comprehend that such a thing could actually exist. But then the smell hit her, a blend of rotted meat and excrement, and the horror became real once more. The creature bellowed again, and this time Kaine responded with a scream of her own. "All right, you bastard," she thought as she screamed echoed off the high clefs all around them. "It's you or me, let's go." The shade eyed Kaine with bemused interest, and it began looking from her to the house and back again, as if urging her to look at the destruction it had so gleefully wrought. With dread building in her heart, Kaine glanced around the house through the smoke and flames, and she spotted a small figure struggling to escape the ruins. "Grandma!" The sound of her voice, the old woman began waving frantically. "She's alive," thought Kaine. "Alive!" Kaine's legs sprang to life as she raced across the yard towards the flecking wreckage of the house. Before she could advance more than a few steps, the shade opened its mouth and let out a roar powerful enough to uproot trees and send them flying. The blast sent Kaine tumbling through the air before smashing her against the rocky earth. Stars danced in front of her eyes as she tried to remember how her legs worked. Get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, now! As Kaine struggled to her feet, the shade stomped toward the house and pinned her grandmother to the ground with the tip of its claw. The old woman struggled to move the claw from her stomach, but she might as well have been pushing a mountain. She coughed briefly, sending a small spray of blood into the air, and then collapsed to the ground, her energy spent. Kaine lurched to her feet, only to fall back to the earth with a gasp. Her ankles were on fire. One or both of them were surely broken. Ignoring the pain that screamed through her body, she began dragging herself across the ground, leaving a drunken trail of dust and blood in her wake. "Grandma, hold on, just a little longer." Grandmother's face was turning blue, and her eyes were rolling back until only the whites were exposed. Kaine pulled herself across the ground with maddening slowness, and the distance seemed to increase with every second that passed. The shade glanced between the two women and flicked out its tongue, its giant mouth turning up at the corners. Short, panting breaths belched from somewhere deep in its core. "Bastard," laughing at us. She had no idea how such a mindless creature could express emotion, but there could be no doubt that the shade was taking joy in their suffering. "Yeah, I see your plan." Shade moved its claws slightly, allowing Grandma to breathe again. It was clearly keeping her alive only to snuff her out when Kaine was close enough to touch her. "I'm gonna kill this bastard." Summoning all of her strength, Kaine rose to her feet, and there was a sickening snap from her right ankle as the foot twisted backwards, but she forced it from her mind and began to hobble towards the monster. Pulling a small knife from the pouch of her waist, she leapt up to the foot that pinned her grandmother and plunged the weapon deep. "Give her back!" she screamed. "Give her back to me!" It was like stabbing a rock. After a few swipes, the knife broke, and with the hilt, a dull snap. The shade panted laughter again and raised its tail to send it crushing through the air towards the young girl that latched onto its foot. Kaine never had a chance. The tail struck her square in the chest and sent her crashing into the burnt wreckage of the home. As she lay on the ground with the blood pouring from multiple wounds, a small weak voice spoke up. "Kaine." Kaine's vision blurred, but she forced herself to focus on the sound. Finally, her eyes cleared enough for her to make out her grandmother's hand reaching out through the smoke. "Grandma? Kaine, you gotta run. You can't beat this one." Kaine grabbed the hands and held on with all her strength. "Grandma, come on, we have to go." The old woman coughed loudly. One of her hands, slick with blood, slipped from Kaine's grasp and thumped to the ground below. "Grandma, no, no. I said run, god damn it. You have to live. You have to get through." The thought would stay forever unfinished. Before she could say another word, the shade's clawed foot descended, smashing through the remains of the roof and down on the shattered figure of the old woman. Blood oozed from the gaps in the creature's toes, and a terrible putrid smell assaulted Kaine's nose once again. She stared at the foot, dumbfounded, convinced that what she was seeing could not possibly be real. When the creature finally lifted, all that remained underneath was a twisted, unrecognizable mass of rubble and red. Her grandmother was gone. Kaine blinked, trying to feel the hands that had been there just a moment before. For a fleeting instant, she could remember the warmth of the embrace, the trembling fingers, but then the sensation drifted away and the breeze was gone. Memories flashed through Kaine's mind, one after another, faster and faster, until they became a seamless jumble of noise. Kaine screamed, then a thunderous sound that echoed off the cliffs and seemed to roll away forever. The shade eased forward, black ichor pouring from its mouth and dissolving into smoke on the ground below. The earth shook with every step it took as it crept towards its prey. Kaine's body slowly rose as if controlled by a mad puppet master. Her arms and legs were bent at impossible angles, and her head lolled dangerously to the side, yet somehow she managed to stand. Staring at the shade, she began to glow with a deep red fire. The creature, so confident just moments before, took a slow, hesitant step backward, trying to discern if this broken human could possibly pose a threat. Kaine seized the moment. Laughing like a madwoman, she leapt into the air and plunged the shattered hilt of her knife deep into the leg of the shade. The shade shook Kaine off like a fly, sending her crashing into the earth once again. Her chest rose and fell slowly, as if a great weight were resting on it. Moist sounds of pain echoed through her mind. Something warm and thick oozed from her ears. Is that jam? It's blood. I think it is. I think I'm bleeding to death. No, can't die. Grandma told me to live. Deep inside Kaine's mind, something finally broke. The sound, the pain, the smoke, the flames, all of it faded away until all that remained was a single incantation repeated over and over again. Kill it, 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 kill it now! As the spark that was Kaine slowly began to flicker and die, she felt her desire to kill and her desire to live blend into one. The distance between heartbeats grew longer and longer and longer. Oh, and then she wakes up. And we're back. That was very long. I don't have...
The beast approaches.
Oh, the beast.
Oh, I know.
Oh, I know. I mean, I've done this before. So I don't think we need to see it. But, I'll just pause. Heat of the battle, and I'll end the episode and start it next time. Oh, I'm playing as NieR. Sweet. Alright. Well, thanks for watching. See you next time.